It's midsummer in Gascony, and here we're looking at a green canopy of trees and leaves, including the walnuts, which will mature and harvest in September. But now we're making a special midsummer aperitif called vin de noix that I will take from using the green walnuts, the immature walnuts, and some of their leaves, and produce a sort of a bittersweet taste of summer for us to drink during the winter. The anatomy of a green walnut is easy to see here. You see the green husk, which will darken and fall off later in the year. The white shell will turn dark and hard, and the inside meat of the nut, the walnut itself that we'll eat, is still being formed here, and everything is sort of juicy. So let's make some vin de noix, just as I do every year here at Command. It's the 24th of June, which is the Feast of St. John, and I'm going to make vin de noix. Start with some green walnuts. I'm going to smash them. Put them into a crock. Trying to not get my hands too juicy because they'll all go brown. And I even put in some of the leaves. In and just give a good smash. Would you like to do that in slow motion? Always wear an apron. And you can see that the husk is just starting to form at this time. So that's what we're looking at. We had a very early spring this year, so they're a little further advanced than normal. I also use this old cutting board because it is a walnut board, and then the walnut stain will make it look nicer afterwards. And there you can see it's already starting to turn brown. I always add in a few leaves. More leaves are very fragrant as well. And then I'll get the rest of the ingredients for the recipe. So I always use sugar cubes because that's all the old recipes. 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24, and 1 for good measure. Cinnamon, nutmeg. In this case, I'm just going to put in a few shavings of nutmeg. And some lemon peel. You can also use orange and any other spices that please you. So clearly I have to get some more alcohol because the alcohol should cover just here to the mass of the walnuts and the sugar. And then we'll put a plate over this and leave it for 24 days. And then we'll add wine to it, and that'll be our vin de noix.
And I was just cutting into the little walnuts that we have here, and I can see that they're already at a very different stage than when they usually are at this time of year. So, Judy, when you make nocino, how similar is that?
It's very similar. We should also mention that it's June 24th, the day it's traditionally done, is here St. John the Baptist Day, and for you, Saint Jean, right?
Right, exactly. And that's why we
same
use 24 walnuts or 24
Exactly.
lumps of
So the
sugar.
number 24. So a lot of people, talk about the solstice. Well, that's the 21st. So this is a patron saint's day. And it's actually the patron saint of Florence and many other cities too. And our nocino, we have a couple of different recipes from different areas. So in Modena, they've actually registered the recipe. And what they do, which I think is very interesting, is we cut the walnuts into quarters, and then they actually sugar it like you would for jam and let that sit overnight. So
that's a great idea.
So it forms a syrup to start. And then we add whole grain alcohol. I'm not sure what you were using. Whole grain? Like 95?
No, usually what I have is this, which is alcohol's special for fruits and drinks. Okay, and it is 80. It's 40% or 80 proof, so it's a little lighter, because we're also going to mix. Yeah, because we're going to mix with wine as well, so it's a much lighter drink rather than a liqueur.
Exactly. So that's also important for people to know when they have like whole grain alcohol or like those fruit alcohols. We have those too. What you're diluting it to. So ours normally here in Tuscany is we just use the white sugar. We use lemon zest, and sometimes, and in Naples, they add coffee beans as a little bit of flavor. And I find that nice. That nocino is a little bit reminiscent of Kahlua, even without coffee beans. It's that really warm, earthy kind of flavor. So anyway, the Modena one is registered, and it starts by marinating the nuts with the sugar first. Here we just put it all in together. And I think, yeah, and it's very similar to yours. It's all counting the days, right? And so you make it now in summer, and then you drink it. I think November is when the official day is to drink it, because it has to rest, and mature.
Yeah,
and we strain it.
I think it's also nice. I always try to wait until the winter solstice. So, making it at summer solstice and then wait till December was sort of a celebration.
Exactly.
This bottle, which I'm right at the bottom of, but we had some of this when you were here last time, but this is from 2013. So it's almost 10 years old. And you can just see there's probably a good, just 4 glasses left in it. And then I'll decant that and then do this year's in the same bonbon when I'm done.
Yeah, this is my bottle. So then, after you have the village I live into is very famous for these quiche little bottles. Remember when they sold Chianti in those funny bottles?
Oh, right, right.
My village actually makes these funny little bottles. So this is like a little cello or something. This is my nocino. So after it's sat and blended with the alcohol, then we drain it and we add simple syrup. So we do a water and sugar simple syrup, and that's what then takes our whole grain alcohol, which is 180 proof. It's 95% alcohol. Makes it to a drinking where you can drink it. But for us, it is an after dinner drink where you would drink, these small, like little digestivo sort of glasses.
Right.
But in Puglia, which is really delicious, they actually use it in stews, the nocino in stews. And it gives a beautiful depth of flavor. And when we were together, I did something they do in the country down in southern Tuscany where they're big wild boar hunters. And we do a wild boar stew we put the green walnuts in.
Yeah, and I can see how that with game, that's perfect.
Well, it almost kind of reminds me, when you pick those green walnuts and the leaves, to me, it almost is reminiscent of those juniper berries, which is often used with game too. So to me,
Yeah.
it's that same kind of a very intense flavor. That's so we just threw
And
the
there
green
are,
walnuts in and then we took them out.
and there were also pickled walnuts. We put together a little booklet from some of the recipes that we've done together, including that that ragu with the green walnuts. I think we used lamb
Mhm.
in it.
We use
That
lamb,
when
yeah.
you were here. And then
Uh-huh.
I did a relish, like a pickled relish tapenade, that I call the tapenade de Saint Jean, where I used a grinder, like a meat grinder, and I ground the green olives up, and then I soaked them in water so that they would be get rid of some of the bitterness 2 or 3 different times, and then I spiced it up and added all kinds of things like you would a pickled walnut, a whole pickled walnut. I have friends who are in Spain who are making, English friends who are making pickled walnuts English style down there. So it's sort of
Yeah.
like you can look and find all kinds of ideas to use. But what I did last year, and I'm just going to decant this now, is I made walnut vinegar. And
Oh,
it's
yummy.
just the same principle. I cut the walnuts in half and then I put a couple leaves as well, because the leaves have their own flavor of that walnut flavor. And a lot of liqueurs call for cherry leaf or peach leaf as well. And then I just covered this completely with, this is with apple cider vinegar, but you can use wine vinegar. I made some red wine vinegar and the lighter vinegar as well. And then this is great for salad dressings, which is, we can buy it already made in the supermarket now, this walnut flavored vinegar, but the homemade is going to be really delicious. And it's great on salads and goes a little bit farther than a walnut oil does, but you still have that same flavor.
That's great. And then we had done those candied walnuts. There's like almost everybody has a recipe. The Russians have, and I found it in Italy. The Greeks have it where it's the candied walnut. It takes forever. You
Yes.
fill them and you soak them in the water and you run the water. And some people even use the I forget in English what you call it, the lime powder.
Oh, lime,
Couch,
yeah.
couch. Anyway,
Calcium,
calcium
calcium.
something or other, which is used often in like the candied fruits and stuff like that. And then it's cooked in a simple syrup, a sugar syrup that gets denser. So what I'm doing this year with the walnuts that I found is I'm going to try, based on what you did with your pickled relish, is I took my walnuts that I found and cut them up. And so being in smaller pieces, I think then I could speed up the process. So basically you're leaching out a lot of that bitterness from those walnuts. And so I've been changing water now for 3 days. And then a lot of the recipes say leave them out on a cookie sheet in the sun until they turn dark. And then you cook them in the sugar syrup. So I'm going to do that this year and see how that works, because they're beautiful with cheese.
Right.
Those pickled walnuts and these candied walnuts are really delicious with cheese too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think of how these recipes evolve in different countries and different places. Somebody was saying, where can I buy them in a grocery store? And it says, not very often are you going to find green walnuts, immature walnuts in a grocery store. But if you know someone who grows walnuts, you could contact a farm or an orchard. You could contact them to see if they give you some. You don't need very many, just a couple dozen of them to make one of these recipes. But it really is going to have to be for next year, because we're just
Well, some
at
people
the
are
point of
behind
the
us though in
season.
the season. So
That's true. But
and in America, a lot of my old clients, they order them online.
okay, great.
So, but really, you just need 24. So
Yeah.
I would plan. The
So not
reason
very
we're doing
much.
this now is to plan for next year. But if you do
That's
find
it.
them, you could do it. But you only need 24. So put your
But
feelers out to all your friends.
but there are other aperitifs that you can make now, and
Exactly.
with fruit, especially all the fruit. Like I have this really beautiful set of books that I bought years ago, and it has these are all aperitif wines, so it means they're lighter and they've been cut, but they're flavored wines. So this is a vin de sauge with sage, rosemary, a ratafia of muscat grapes, pruneau, because we live in prune country, daffodils, dandelions, vin de pissenlit, peach. And the peach one, like most of the fruit ones, calls for using the leaves as well. So you
And the
use
pits, right?
100. Yeah, you use for each liter of rosé wine, you use 100 peach leaves, a, a glass and a half of eau de vie, and that would be that out just the plain alcohol or brandy, clear brandy, sugar, and a little bit of vanilla too. And the same idea is you're just going to let it sit for it says 8 days here, but you know, it doesn't take very long for when you've got that much alcohol for the flavor to infuse into the
Exactly. The more
alcohol.
alcohol, the faster it does it. So that's why a lot of people too making like limoncello. If you
Yes.
use vodka, 100 proof vodka, is only like 50% alcohol. So
Mhm.
it takes longer to really leach out all the flavor. Whereas I'm using, 180 proof vodka, alcohol, 95%. And so I make my limoncello just in a couple of days. I forgot it on my table over there. I'll see if Andrea can get it for me. I have a new
Great.
recipe for you guys too that I'm going to send out. But it's to make limoncello in just a couple of days, really, a week maximum, but just a couple of days, you actually have leached
You
out
can,
enough to limoncello.
and you can tell when you see the lemon rinds, right? Because the
Uh-huh.
rind has started to give its color as well. So
Yeah,
it
let me just call
bleaches
Andrea.
out.
Andrea, he may have gone upstairs.
I want to call
Oh,
Andrea.
I hear him. I hear him. I forgot it over on my other table in the courtyard. But I started a little, mi porti per limoncello lì, per il barattolino. Grazie. My personal assistant. E mi fai un altro porchettino, ok? Ti vedi qui dove è bianco? Guarda, qui davanti. Mi tocca quella bottoncina a destra. Vedi, no, qui. Vedi fuori. Well, I have on my screen, I have the thing where it says a destra, quello blu a destra, quella a destra, continua, la parola con C. A destra, sì. Thanks. Okay. I had a little piece of white notes. But anyway, here is my limoncello that I just started 2 days ago. And I'm just using a half a cup of limoncello of a whole grain alcohol with the 2 lemons. And it is I put it in the sun. So it's bright, bright yellow now. And the new trick, this is a new secret, my friends invented this. They make a limoncello aperitif. So instead of being the alcohol, it's done with a wine base.
Well, that's exactly what we do with oranges here and make a vin d'orange. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's a great idea. The difference for me between a liqueur and a aperitif, by French standards anyway, has to be about 18% alcohol,
Yeah.
not much more, no less. So it's like just a fortified wine. And I'll show you. Should I show you the orange one I did already? And then
Yeah.
when you just said 2 lemons and a half a cup, I thought that's perfect because these little micro batches. Sometimes we get into making
Exactly.
these huge batches of things. I just took a glass jar, like a liter jar, and I filled it with the last of the oranges that I have. These are not bitter oranges, but Valencia oranges that I got from an organic farm, and I just sliced them and put covered them. No, I didn't cut. I put a little bit of sugar, not a lot, because I didn't want it to be really sweet. And then I put white wine, sort of fruity Côte de Gascogne, and then I added a shot of a eau de vie, which is a brandy made from clementines, or clementines from Corsica. So it has an extra little kick of the citrus on top of it. And then this is like a wine to drink before a meal. But I'll also make a cocktail with it and use sparkling water, this, and a little bit of the eau de vie with it as well to make a long drink, which is, I'm going to do that now while you talk to us about Negronis.
Yeah, because what
everybody
my
wants to
friends do
know.
with this, these are my friends that have a distillery, and they make all these kind of antique, old school liqueurs and they're beautifully presented in bottles and stuff. And I was saying just before, during COVID, they actually came out and started making disinfectant, because it's all the same ingredients of whole grain alcohol and the lemon. And so they made our hand disinfectant with lemons. So they invented, they call it limoncino instead of limoncello. And so it's the whole grain alcohol with the lemons. And then, like your vin d'orange, I'm going to add white wine to it. And then that's your base. You could drink it as it is. but they also make a gin with thyme, rosemary, and juniper.
Oh, wow.
And so
Nice.
you can do the limoncino, a little hit of gin, and then finish it off like a spritz, either with a tonic or a prosecco. Very refreshing.
Yeah, and because I'm like a lot of people are sort of going lighter on alcohol these days, I'm making this into a long drink. So I've got the Bend Orange over ice, and I'm gonna use just sparkling water.
Mhm.
And then I'll float a little bit of the clementine or eau de vie or brandy on top of it, just so you get that
Perfect.
first hit of
So
alcohol, and
refreshing.
then you can go slowly the rest of it. Otherwise, I would just drink it down.
And I think that's one thing about our aperitivo and aperitifs. They're not meant for drinking purposes. They're kind of just meant to sit and chat for a long time. So I saw somebody in front of me at the grocery store today buying like top ramen noodles and Red Bull. And I was wondering if he was going to pair the Red Bull with like making a ramen bowl. You know, it's like he was a college kid.
Yeah, I think, things have changed a lot since I first moved to France. And when we were invited for aperitifs at our neighbors or with people we meet, it was always like you go for one aperitif, maximum two, but one aperitif, and then you stay 1 hour and then you leave because you're not invited for dinner. You're just invited for aperitifs. But
Yeah.
over the years, that stretched and stretched and stretched. And now it's really quite the fashion in all over France to do what they call apéro dînatoires, which is basically you make a meal of aperitifs and grazing, and people drink less of the kind of traditional aperitifs like vermouth or Pernod or Ricard, and they drink more wine. So you're not drinking heavily alcohol drinks, so you can extend it over the course of several hours.
Well, since you're drinking, I'm going to drink too. So I think most people from Italy know
Salud.
about the spritz, right? And most people drink an Aperol spritz. I don't even have a bottle of that because I don't like it. It tastes like, to me, like a cough syrup. It's very medicinal. I can drink it if I add more orange, real orange to it. It's really nice. But I'm a Campari girl, so I usually have like a Campari soda for an aperitif. But what's really beautiful in Italy, I also love retro packaging. This is Campari soda bottles that you can buy that come for aperitivos that are already ready. So
Yeah, I love
this
those.
is a Campari soda. The bottles are great afterwards for like little vases for like your dinner tables, right? And you just add this and right on the rocks, and it's already blended for you. And this is it. This is your Campari soda already made, which is so fabulous. Now you can add a slice of orange. The oranges pretty much are gone here, so I don't bother. But you can add an orange slice to this, would be very typical. So refreshing. But can I keep talking?
Yeah, go ahead.
was
Tell
just
us
gonna
more.
tell you.
Tell me more about all the bitters, because I think
Okay,
that's
so I
something we
wanted
don't
to
have
talk
as
about-
much here.
Yeah, so Campari is really bitter, and a lot of people don't like Campari because how bitter it is. But I think we have before dinner bitters and after dinner bitters, which are all delicious when you learn to love that. It's like the raw artichoke flavor, which is so popular. Olives, olive leaf, and stuff like that. We also do infusions with that. But Campari, I think, is most famous for a Campari spritz. They also have the Negroni, which is one of my favorite cocktails, which is very strong, and you only drink one. And that's like equal parts of Campari, red vermouth, and gin. And that was invented in downtown Florence. There was actually a drink called the Americano. And the Americano was the Campari and the sweet red vermouth, which is called martini. So that's a problem when you come here and drink, because if you come here and you ask for a martini, I've been here almost 40 years now, you would get the vermouth on the rocks.
Yeah, the same thing here. We get the martini brand as well, and that's true.
So there's
Whereas,
the red one and the white one, yeah.
and
and
the
they
white
would
one
just
is dry.
Yeah, and so it would be just like the aperitivo thing. People don't really go and get like a shot of vodka in the afternoon or anything, right? So what I wanted to show you as like my signature kind of drink from this party today in the 1920s, the original spritz came from Venice. I think that's where it really started the trend. And this is a bottle, which was actually the original liqueur that was used to make the spritz. And it's called Select. And it's much nicer than either Campari or Aperol. In the grocery store, it's like about 10 euros a bottle. And it to me, it's more vermouthy. It's very, very nice. And so what is nice for summer is to not use the gin. I'm going to add my ice first. But to
I'm
do
not a gin drinker.
that, I mean, you can
I'm
only
not-
have one or two and then your socks are knocked off, right? And it's just not
Right.
a good idea. So I'm just going to add my ice. And basically it's 3 parts of Prosecco, 2 of the Select, and 1 of like a tonic water. So even though you're using Prosecco, they tend to lighten it a little more. Okay. I use a little. They all do kind of look medicinal. I think, you know, when that's where they all started.
Yeah, but they were infusions to get herbal medicinal plants
Medicinal.
as a way to get
Make-
to, like, we have all kinds of, as you mentioned, cough syrup basically was herbal to start with.
And then another fun thing, I went to get like the all the retro stuff. In you know, you have gin and tonic in America. This is called aqua brillante, and it's our tonic water. And again, the big flavor of tonic water is the quinine bark, right?
Right, right.
This is one of my favorites. I love quina. That first trip when Andrea and I came to visit you, we stopped in Avignon. And I don't know why,
Yeah.
I was in this pharmacy, maybe getting something. And I saw a little paper container and it had all the herbs to make your own vermouth, your own
Yeah.
aperitivo with the wine. So
Yeah,
that
you
was
used to
one.
see that a lot in they were called druggeries, and you would find all kinds of little, besides hardware, you'd find all kinds of things to make,
Andrea,
whether there were
Prosecco.
salts for charcuterie or other things as well. You know, I was going to mention, if anybody has any questions, Elaine's kind of monitoring the chat room. If you've got a question, and
Andrea,
we'll stop in a few minutes and look at some of those. I've got a couple other bottles here as well. Sometimes I do this, like I forget to put a label on it. It says made in France because I made it here. But this is a cherry liqueur that we made last year when we had cherries in abundance last year. And there's also a cherry pit liqueur and some candied cherries and all kinds of things. Cherry vodka, which I recycled one of my absolute bottles. So I made that.
I love
sacrificed that
recycling all the bottles.
bathtub.
Yeah.
I know, mine are always a little quirky. But the other thing that we have, that we also do in this region, particularly, is to make an aperitif with Armagnac. So Armagnac is the alcohol base, and it's not aged Armagnac like usually, but this one is. And this we would call Floc or Floc de Gascogne, the bouquet of Gascony. And it's made with, when they just press the grapes for wine, before it ferments, and it's just sweet grape juice, they add 2/3 of grape juice to 1/3 of Armagnac spirits. And that creates this 18% volume. This is from one of the one of the Armagnac makers down the road from me that I love, La Devez family. And they actually use their aged Armagnac in it. So it's really very, it has a lot of flavor to it. And we would serve this either straight in a little glass, like really little, like this. And the fact this is a Floc de Gascogne glass, because these are meant just to have sips, like sherry. And then you would have this with you'd have 1 or 2 of these, and that would be it. It's, you know, 18% still quite a kick. It's more than a glass of wine.
Yeah, that's very strong for a wine. Yeah, it's one of the, what do they call the meditation wines?
I don't know what that means. Meditation.
Oh, in Italy, we have these wines that are very, very heavy, and they're like 18% alcohol, like an Amarone or something like that. And they're not meant to really drink with dinner, like, you know, Italians don't knock back wine anyway, but they're more meant for sipping and talking like after, you know, or
the meditation. I like that.
A cigar, meditation. Andrea, he went to get my Prosecco. Anyway, the Negroni Sbagliato is the like either Campari. I use the Select today, a little tonic water, and then it's be finished off with the Prosecco. I'll just wait till that comes. The other thing I wanted to show you too, and this is kind of our Gascony Torino connection. This is another one of those fortified wines, and this is called Barolo Chinato. So this is one of our strongest wines, the Barolo wine, but it's made into a liqueur with quinine bark and other ingredients. And this pairs beautifully with chocolate. So this is again at the end
Wow.
of the meal with a nice
Okay.
piece of chocolate. Torino is really famous for their chocolate, and a Barolo Chinato is absolutely incredible. And I think that's fun
Yeah,
about is pairing the things, right?
I love that quinine connection too. And here, of course, Lillet Quina, it used to be called in the Bordeaux area, is a mixture of like 20 different citrus fruit and aromats, as well as wine, white wine. There also is a red Lillet as well, and even a rosé Lillet now that's quite popular. So that quinine does bring, especially with citrus or with the other fruits, really does bring out the flavor. It was, again, very popular at the turn of the century. That's the heyday in France of the aperitifs. And when the American soldiers came to France in World War I, when they went back to the States, they took back the culture of drinking aperitifs. And in fact, it was many of the companies, including Lillet, are owned by American alcohol companies now.
Wow.
And Noli Prat is another famous vermouth, dry vermouth that's made on the Mediterranean about 2.5 hours from here. And it has a base of chamomile, among other things. So you don't know what you're getting. It's like an infusion of herbs and spices and wormwood and raspberry mistel and all kinds of wonderful things. So when you cook with vermouth, which if you think about like all kind of 19th century bourgeois French cooking always had, you made a sauce with vermouth because you're infusing all those wonderful herbs and spices in it.
Yeah. So here now, Andrea brought me my Prosecco, and this is always served with a green olive. I don't know why, but it was served with a green olive. So often a real spritz, you will see a green olive in there. Okay. And then you eat it at the end. Very refreshing because it doesn't have the gin. Chin chin.
Yeah. Chin chin. Salut.
Chin chin? Do you say that? What do you say in France?
We say salut. We say salut, bonheur, happiness, or bonheur, santé, health and happiness. I always say here at Come On, it started on the boat many years ago. Here's to those who showed up, which means all of you out there as well. And speaking of, if we've got any questions, are there any questions, Elaine? Okay, so we're going to have a little commercial break. Sorry, Judy, what was that?
Oh, I did see the question about this that goes with the chocolate. It's called Barolo Chinato. Chinato. China, it looks like China, but a CH is a K like Chianti. So Barolo is the Italian famous wine. Chinato means quinine. And this one is by the Cocchi company, Cocchi. But I almost think it's worth, I'll see if I can throw in a recipe. You can find Barolo wine, and at most herboristerie, you could find, and there's bitters workshops now online that'll sell you boxes of different things.
I've made vermouth, sweet vermouth, like vermouth Spanish style, from a kit that I got when I was in Spain, which was basically orange peel from the Seville oranges, bitter oranges. Sometimes stir in a little tablespoon of marmalade, orange marmalade, into something to give it that bitterness. So you want something sweet and bitter and spicy. There might be star anise, cloves, cinnamon, all of those sort of warm spices.
You see this one? Here, we usually go to monasteries to buy the real secret ancient things, because the monasteries, well, they started champagne, right? Dom Perignon, and they were like the original wine. This one is called Alkermes. It's a red liqueur, and this one also has rose petals in it, but the red coloring is not from the roses. It's from a little red bug that grows in cactuses called cochineal, which was used for dyeing
Yeah.
fabrics. And it was the most expensive. And we use this for cakes, for a soak in our pastries and forms.
Oh, nice. So there has been this whole rebirth of culture of drinks and aperitifs and cocktails. Obviously, been on everybody's radar for quite a while. But I think that when you come to France or Italy, people go into a bar, they don't know what to order. They see all those bottles, they kind of get, a brain
Overwhelmed.
freeze, and they don't know what to, overwhelmed. And so it's just like pick one, ask the bartender or ask the waiter, what, I've never had an aperitivo. What should I try? And they're going to come with something weird and wonderful for you. I
But I
want to
know
just
Okay.
let's just see if there are any other questions, and then we want to talk a little bit about food after that.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to
So-
mention too, I think you mentioned it before, was that often if you go to a restaurant, they're not going to take your drink order before they take your meal order. Most restaurants
Ri-
wouldn't serve you an aperitivo before they would serve you dinner, right? You go to a bar.
You'd go, oh yeah, yes. I'd say it's a fairly recent phenomenon here. And if you're at a fancy restaurant with a bar, you might be seated somewhere else to have an aperitif. They would come and take your order there and then take you to your table to eat. That would be
Mhm.
like a beautiful 3-star Michelin restaurant would do that.
Yeah.
So in the same way you would have your coffee in the lounge afterwards rather than at the table, you would get up and move to some other space and have your coffee at the end. So yeah, so you would go meet your friends in a bar, have an aperitif, and then go on to dinner from there. There are none. Okay, great. Well, we'll just carry on talking then. One of the things we wanted to talk a little bit about, I know Judy, you prepared some aperitif food. So aperitif,
Yeah.
aparo comes from the Latin word to open, and it was a medical term to open the veins, open up the body, and the idea of drinking the alcohol, the sweet, the bitter was to open your appetite as well. But we also have specific things you usually eat with aperitifs. In France, in particular in this rural area, and in my house, we have a lot of charcuterie because that's what I do. I teach charcuterie as well. And I have some saucisson that I made a couple months ago here, and some noix de jambon, which are little hams, little dried cured salt and pepper hams. And they're soft. It's like a prosciutto, but it's soft, and you'll see that it's cut a little thicker because we're going to eat it just like this, not wrapped around something. Although I'll eat this with figs a little later in the season, with melon, or the salami or the saucisson with the melon is fabulous as well. And then always olives, because you want that, again, that sort of bitter olives, and the salty cornichons that would go with the charcuterie. And these are homemade, that I've been making my own cornichons because I know where they come from. My garden. Not
Yeah, I was
across the
gonna
world.
say too, because when you order an aperitivo, a traditional, just like regular bar, would bring you like some chips or something. Today I bought these for people that are gluten free too. Now there's a whole new culture of, these are chickpea flour chips, and there's lentil
nice.
chips and things like that. Not that potato chips are not gluten free, but interesting flavors. And I think the chickpea flour, both of us too have that chickpea flour culture of the chashina, what's it called with you? The soca, right? From Nice.
Soca in Provence, right? Yeah.
And
We
then
did-
they have a
we did.
fried one. Don't they have little fried sticks too? What are those called?
Panis.
Okay,
And
honey.
again, that's very much Nice, which I like to remind people is the
Italy.
Provence. It's Italy. So you have
It's
Nice
Italy.
raviolis, and you have all these things. I think, like, really, it's Italian food, but it's delicious Niçoise food. And over in this part of France, in the southwest, we might have charcuterie. Definitely is always on the table for aperitif. People will cure their own some of their own vegetables. pate, obviously, those are all meat products, but you might have crudité, a few crudité, which would be raw vegetables and something to, a dip to like aioli or something to dip into them.
Now, when you go to a bar, do they give you those things or do you order them?
Most bars are going to be pretty modest, like they may have some nuts or some little crackers. It's really just something salty to keep you drinking.
Exactly. Like,
There are sort of new wave wine bars, wine and charcuterie bars, and there you would order a board with charcuterie or maybe even cheese, because although cheese is usually held for the end of a meal, there are certain kind of rules that get relaxed for aperitifs, like those little apericubes. They're like little the size of dice wrapped in tin foil, like bright colored foil. You have to unpeel each one, and it's sort of like cream cheese inside. But
yeah.
they're very popular with people, and you'll find them in bowls in everybody's houses when you go to aperitif time.
Yeah,
I like to
because
make
here
things
it
myself.
started out with just like you would get, like I said, like the chips, maybe like a couple of olives. And these are olives that I cured. I got them in December and they were ready 3 or 4 months later. Today I had some pistachios because I'm making a galantine this week, and they're from Sicily, so we have those. And then anchovies. I know you too do a lot of anchovies, and we had the
I
salt
love
cured
anchovies.
anchovy. And I did them
Yeah.
today in a salsa verde, which is a parsley caper, kind of really, it's really good for an aperitivo, the salsa verde on like anything. But even an anchovy just on butter, we do the same thing, butter and anchovies.
And
then
what I
today-
do with, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, today I made something that I found in like Catania, a sun-dried tomato pesto. So we soften our sun-dried tomatoes, and then we use almonds and pine nuts,
Oh,
with the Parmesan cheese and basil, and it makes this beautiful dark paste. So you could just spread this on bread, and it's absolutely delicious. But you can also use it on pasta, thin it and use it on pasta. So pesto di pomodori secchi. And then in the jar, actually, I garnished it with some pistachios, because in Sicily, in the markets, I can buy sun-dried cherry tomatoes already packed in oil, a little bit of garlic, which is also in the pesto, and then already has the pistachio pieces in it.
Oh, nice. So that's typical of Sicily, the pistachios and all the tomatoes. So yeah.
Each
It's
region has
you
their
know,
own thing.
Yeah, it's nice to preserve those regional specialties, because it's so easy now. People go to the Grand Surface or big supermarkets and then get the same thing from everywhere. Like I can go and buy really nice, and I'm glad to be able to buy beautiful Italian cheese, mozzarella di bufalo, and all kinds of wonderful things, great Greek feta in my local markets. But I also like to support the local producers. As you know, that's a big part of what we both of us do in our classes. So I also feel like things fall by the wayside if we don't keep sharing them. So all the recipes that I try to pass on and teach to people, I try to keep to this area, because you can go to Nice. I could do Niçoise food, or I could do Burgundy food, or food from Normandy or Brittany. But there are other people in those places. And so I really like to keep my roots here in Gascony in the Southwest. Like dip down into the Basque Country a little bit too.
Yeah, what I want to warn people about too is like not every region of Italy, like France, like you're saying, it's different. So if I'm in Florence and Tuscany, it's kind of like a rich area. But you might go to, like, the tradition is we get like an aperitivo, and they get the chips and the olives and something like that, simple. If you go to what we would call like a bar, is often where you get your cappuccino in the morning, and you would start off with like croissant pastries. And at lunchtime, then they have savory bits, right? Little sandwiches and things like that. And then you get to like 5 or 6 o'clock when people are finishing their day, and they'll turn over to doing spritzes, a glass of Prosecco. And what they might do is at the end of the day, then they'll take their leftover savory pieces and warm them and give you a little plate of things.
Oh, nice.
So there'll be like the puff pastry with the mozzarella and tomato on the inside, little bites of things, and they don't keep leftovers and resell it to you the next day.
Right.
So they give them away. So you would get this and a little plate of some warm food. Perfect, right? You go to Puglia.
Actually,
You go to Puglia and they fill your table. And, you know, the
Yes.
farther south you go, the cheaper things are. So, you know, if I'm sitting at a table in Florence, there's a table charge for sitting down, whatever,
Yes.
that's fine. I go to Puglia and that same drink, instead of 10 euros, 4 euros. And instead of like dried potato chips and some nut peanuts, I'm getting 8 plates of food. So you have
Yeah.
to be careful. So to me, that can be dinner. We talked about those aperitivs, where you pay for like dinner and you have access to a buffet. So that's
It
the new.
reminds me when I was in university in Hawaii. I grew up in Hawaii. We would go out for a beer, and it was, I can remember very clearly, it was 25 cents for a Coors beer. I mean, that was the cheapest beer you could get. But when you go to any bar in Hawaii, in those days, especially we're talking 50 years ago, you would get a plate of what were called pupus, P-U-P-U. And pupus could be anything. If it was a Korean bar, you got these great platters of amazing kimchi and all kinds of things. If it was a bar near the university, you might get a hot dog. But whatever it was the cheapest way for us as students to eat. So we would always go where you could get platters of food that way with your 25-cent beer. So things have come a long way. Huh?
It's so, yeah. But the thing is now it's like $7.
Okay.
Everything is relative, huh?
Well, yeah. And, you know, I think we can talk just a little bit about what we're doing now and where both of us are at. We, as people have been watching, Europe has just opened up. There's freer movement around. People are being vaccinated, incoming from both the United States and other countries. The gates are sort of open. Once you arrive in Europe, you can travel freely between the different countries. And so I've started to put dates for my in-person cooking classes, as well as doing all the great stuff online that both of us have been doing all year long. It's going to be nice to welcome some people back to cook with. It's sort of been lonely in my kitchen. So, and you've got a trip planned to Sicily soon, I think.
Yeah, I have one in September and one in November. These are private groups that, you know, a lot of my things anymore, I've kind of almost like, I closed my teaching space in 2016, and I started more private tours and organizing like group tours in Florence and Tuscany, Puglia, Sicily. Just a life change for me, because my tiny little Tuscan kitchen, which is my online classes and things like that, I can't have people at my house. It's a tiny little place to teach. So when people come for the week, we usually rent a villa or something like that. We cook there. But yeah, my first clients are coming. And the thing, I don't know about in France, but Italy, just on Monday, we're going maskless outside, which is really nice. And they just announced last Monday that if you're vaccinated in America, you don't need the tests anymore to fly in, but you must be flying directly from America to Italy.
Okay. No stopovers in London. And,
no stop. Yeah. London is still problems, right?
Well, everybody in Paris is remarking on how wonderful it is to be able to visit all the museums at this time of year without a lot of people around. But you should come to the countryside, because it's like it always is. It's quiet and beautiful and peaceful, and locals are friendly, and everything here revolves around food and wine. And so nothing much has changed in that way, except that now we can actually get together to eat, which was the hardest thing for all of us, was not being able to to cook but not be able to eat. We had set up a series of like drive-by drop-offs for friends and a group of people that I know. But I'm very excited that starting in September, I'll have my first cooking classes here at Camont. So.
Yay.
Judy, I think it's time to have some aperitifs. I'd invite you to have some noix de jambon and saucisson with me, and finish my drink. And
I know,
I think Elaine's going to help me out.
I think they need to know too. We don't drink without eating. That's like a law, right? Even a glass of wine. When you go to like the in Venice, especially, it's like tapas, right? You have something to eat while you're drinking. That's just like the law. And even if you pay for it or don't pay for it. So in Venice, you go and they do like cicchetti tours, which are cicchetti are the small bites. And so you can go to a bar and usually get a spritz, something that's not really alcoholic. You know, I'm already feeling this, of course, so because I haven't been drinking in ages. It's like we're coming out of hibernation, right?
Yeah, I feel a bit
Oh,
like a bear.
we've kind of lost our lifestyle skills.
Yeah, I found that I have to remember all my jokes and and get and but I'm very excited because there's a lot of both of us have been building a lot of video libraries, and so that a lot of what we do when people come is like you do it once and it's gone, or even if you repeat the recipes over and over, and it's so ephemeral, we eat it and it disappears. And so I'm very happy that you've taken that time and energy and was inspiring me as well to get these videos of how to make those classic things that people really don't do very much anymore, but we've kind of carried the torch to do them. So they'll be available in your video library and as mine as well. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'm glad we had this. We usually chat in the morning over coffee, so this is actually kind of nice to do it over
Exactly.
aperitif.
It's kind of nice to be outside and dressed with makeup, right? Lipstick and hair.
Yeah,
What is
absolutely.
Campari
So
made from? Actually, let me just see. I saw that question. Usually these things are 30 different ingredients. So
yeah,
it's not really easy, but there's usually almost always bitter quinine. I put it up at home and then we'll put it in the thing. When you
yeah,
read the ingredients, it says sugar is the #1 first ingredient, alcohol, natural aromas, and coloring, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it
Yeah, I
says
think that
aromatic plants, fruits, and herbs in the classic and antique recipe. So often you could just like Google those sort of things. And each one is a little bit of different. The select, for example, says on the back, is 30 different aromatic herbs that they have some pure things like juniper berries. And then they have balsamic and floral notes. The roots of rabarbaro, which should be rabarbaro is like rhubarb,
rhubarb, uh-huh.
but I'm not sure if it's the same rhubarb. I think they use the root and not the fruit.
Okay.
Okay, so not the fruit itself, but the roots. And I think a lot of the aromatics that are used in making drinks are barks, berries, and roots.
Dried roots, yeah. I was gonna say I had this bottle of pastis, which this is an artisan Henri Bardouin pastis that my sister always liked, and there are 65 ingredients, including angelique, armoise,
Oh, yummy.
star anise, cinnamon, cardamom, tonka beans, cloves, peppers,
Tonka beans,
licorice,
nice.
muscat, nutmeg, sage, thyme, and many other things that are jealously kept secret. So that's right on their label. But so yeah, these are like think of this as your sort of your tisane or infusions of all these special plants and herbs that you should drink for your health.
So I went to this in there's a town, and it's interesting. This liqueur is called Strega, which means the witch. And it's from a town called Benevento, which was famous for the witches which lived there. And I think we were talking about this before we started. The walnut tree is often associated with witches and witch. And this Strega, again, is like 35 different ingredients. Saffron is one of the ingredients in here.
Oh, okay.
Star anise is another one. So those very beautiful aromatics, often there's like cardamom. If you start thinking about flavors you love, you could infuse anything in like a beautiful 100-proof vodka. Let it sit in a like cheesecloth or throw it in and then filter it out. And then add simple syrup and you've got a liqueur like this.
And if you, in cooking, if you deglaze a pan juices with something like that, you're going to infuse all those herbs and spices into that sauce that you would make. Like if you had a lamb and you wanted to deglaze a pan with lamb, pastis is a natural connection with that because lamb is very Provençal, and that goes with it.
And so Pernod a lot with scallops and fish. And this is another used a lot. You would cut this with a simple syrup and use this for a cake soak. And many of
Oh.
our pastries have this soak in it. And it's one of those things when you taste it, you go, ooh, what is that? People often just make a simple syrup to soak their cakes. But if you do something like your, you know, your rose syrup or mint syrup or these liqueurs, they're delicious. Limoncello,
Yeah.
I mean, anything, right?
Sounds great.
Makes you
Judy,
wanna
thanks
go
so
make a
much.
cake.
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking, I haven't done that in a while. So thanks for showing up, everybody. And we'll look forward to sending you a copy of the green walnut recipe booklet and anything else we come across, and a recording as well. So if you want to go back and look at this or share this with friends. And please support Judy's newsletter and mine and all the wonderful work that we do here from kitchens in Tuscany and Gascony. Salut,
Yeah.
Judy.
Chin
See you
chin.
soon.
Thank you so
Ciao.
much. Great.
Chin
Ciao.
chin. Ciao. This is delicious. Wish you could taste this.
Yeah, my website is divinacucina.com, DIVINACUCINA. And both Kate and I have Substack newsletters now, which also have subscription ones as well as free ones. There's always a free version of everything. And Kate, you have your new teaching website, right?
We'll send out the links when a follow-up
perfect.
email. That'll be easier, and then
Perfect.
people can just click on that.
I just saw asking questions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. See you.
Ciao, ciao. Arrivederci.
Arriva.